Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anne-Marie Butler. I'm the President of the Agricultural Science Association, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this, the first in a two-part series, Climbing the Career Ladder. It's a foggy morning here in Kilkenny, so hopefully you're all well where you are and the conditions are good. We're delighted this morning to be joined by a stellar lineup of speakers, and we're delighted that you've taken the time to join us. And I certainly think it'll be time very well spent for you and your colleagues as you embark and progress in your own careers. Events like today would not be possible without our sponsors, and I would like to sincerely thank both Grant Thornton and Macra Agricultural Skillnet for their continued support of ASA and enabling us to bring events like this to our members, particularly at times like this, directly into your own homes. As I said, we have two wonderful speakers this morning, Gerry Duffy, who's an international speaker on leadership, goal setting and public speaking, and will need no introduction to many of you here this morning, and also Marcus O'Halloran, who's Executive Director at AgriAware and will share many insights with you on his learnings from life to date and career insights. As always, at ASA, we welcome you. We welcome your interaction, so please do post your questions on the Q&A function, and we'll take questions at times throughout, and maybe at the end we'll have some discussion. So please do get involved. Please do also, if you want to come on, we can bring people on to ask their questions. At this point, I would like to hand over to James McMahon. James is Tax Director with Grant Thornton. Grant Thornton, as I said, have very kindly sponsored the event this morning. James is an ag graduate, a former member of the ASA Council, so needs no introduction to ASA members. So James, I'll hand to yourself, and for everyone else, enjoy the morning.
Perfect. Thanks a million, Anne-Marie. Yeah, look, Grant Thornton, we were delighted when Anne-Marie reached out for some sponsorship. We've always been a big supporter of the ASA and the ag science community in general. You know, we've taken on over 20 graduates in the past 3 to 4 years, and previously before that as well. So it helps, you know, Grant Thornton as a firm to be able to deal with the clients that we work with, let it be farmers, processors, retailers, the whole way through the system on the agri-food side of things. So again, look, delighted to sponsor today's session. And, you know, when Anne-Marie mentioned that it was Gerry Duffy going to be speaking today, I would have actually attended one of Gerry's sessions before. He probably won't remember, but when I finished in UCD doing ag science, going back a number of years ago, I did a master's in DCU, and I would have been on the Fitzgibbon team in DCU at the time, and Gerry came down and gave a talk. We got knocked out of the championship fairly quick after that, but that wasn't the main thing. The main thing is that many of the anecdotes that Gerry goes through, I still adhere to today, you know, setting those small targets in the overall bigger picture of where your career is going. So we were delighted when this collaboration could be done. So look, at that's teeing up Gerry well. So I'll pass it on to Gerry, and thanks very much to Anne-Marie, Niall and Barbara for the hard work in setting this up and bringing GT on board. So over to you, Gerry.
I have 4 questions I'd like to ask you. Number 1, I'm calling, and right now I'm standing in Mullingar, in the center of the country. I'm interested to know, where exactly are you right now? Where are you sitting right now? What town, what village, what city are you in? And be as specific as you can. You might let us know in the chat box when you are ready, please. I'd love to get a feel for who's here, please. Just type your answer into the chat box. Dundalk, first one in the box. Clonakilty, Kilkenny, Ennis, County Clare. Kilkenny again, well represented. Selbridge, County Kildare, Oldcastle, Gorey. So we've Wexford, we've Meath, we've the UK, wonderful. County Galway, Tullow, County Carlow, Inishannon, County Tip, I see again, Tullow, Glenmore. Kilkenny is very well represented here today, but Tip has made a comeback. Their Tip are here now as well, so Care. Somebody very close to me, Calucan, County Westmeath. I'm about 7 miles from Calucan as we speak. And the Kingdom is represented as well. Excellent. Well, delighted to welcome you. Here's another question. My hometown has a couple of famous people, Michael O'Leary, Niall Horan, born and grew up in the town. I'd love you to name somebody famous from your town or your locality or somewhere close to you. Just share who's famous that we might recognize from your, from where you live, where you were maybe born as well. Just give us some insights into that, please. Michael Collins. Alice Taylor. Oh, that writer, Alice Taylor, I presume. Yeah, brilliant. Laura Corbett, Tipperary hurler. Who else do we have? Famous people. Henry Shefflin. Anne-Marie. Oh, great answer. Anne-Marie Butler. Love it. Barack Obama. Might be hard to top that one for sure. Moneygall, County Tipperary, I think. Is that right? Where else? Just, I'd love some more answers when you're ready. Rena Buckley, Saoirse Ronan, I think that is that Carlo, I think possibly. Rena Buckley, is that Cork? I'm not sure. Edmund Rice, yeah, somebody I remember from my primary school days. Have we one more famous person? Must be one more famous person out there. Maybe there's two people from your town. I'd love one more answer before we kick in. Do we have one? Jim Core, I think that's Dundalk if I'm not mistaken. Jim Core from the Corrs, the music band The Corrs, love it. So next question, I did promise you 4 questions. So the next question, approximately how many years are you into your career? Are you 2 years in it? Are you 5 years in it? Are you 10 years in it? Just give me a number in the chat box. How many years are you into your career? 13 years, 5 years, 5, 15, 2, just graduated. Welcome, welcome. 6 months. Okay, 9 years, 4 years, 3 months, 3 years, 20 years. So just graduated. Isn't that great that we have such a mix? Probably more younger graduates than people that have been around for quite a while. A few people like me propping up the median, 20 and 22 years. I think I'm 37 years into my career now at this stage. Or since I left school anyway, maybe a little bit less in term, but certainly in around the 30, 31 years, that kind of thing. So I think I'm the oldest person possibly, or the longest career person here. Final question. Who here is interested? And if you are, please type, yes, I am into chat. Who here is interested in climbing the career ladder even more? If you are, just type, yes, I am into chat. If you're interested in climbing the career ladder, your career ladder even more. Yes, I am. I'm seeing lots of yes, I ams. If you are, I'd love to see, yeah, actually it's flying there now. Excellent. I'm kind of glad you answered yes to that question because it's the theme of what we're here to speak about. And I'm delighted to share the stage. One of your colleagues, Marcus, is going to be on after me. I'm just a warm-up for Marcus. So delighted, and I've an insight into what Marcus is going to cover. I think you're going to find it really interesting and really valuable to hear from somebody, one of your peers, one of your colleagues, and Marcus is going to be following my session. I also want to thank Niall Brennan. Niall was the original person who introduced me in here. I think Niall heard me speaking in his company. He works with Alltech, and he said to himself, he couldn't be that bad twice. I think I'll recommend him into NSA. Maybe he'll be better the next time. But I'm delighted to be here. And thank you, Niall. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Anne-Marie, and everybody involved in giving me the opportunity to work with you today. I promised you 6 things, and we're doing this over 2 sittings, 2 legs. So we're coming back to you again on the 13th of January with the second part of this presentation. I promise you I've got some things in there that have really supported me in my career. But I'm going to share 3 with you today, but we're going to deep dive into 2, and then we're going to really dig in the second half in January. I'm going to encourage you to write things down, because you'll have forgotten 95% of what I've said by the time you have your lunch, because we can only retain so much information. And I've learned the value in my career when knowledge pops in front of me. Knowledge pops in front of us every single day, and we see something interesting. Oh, that's really valuable. But if we don't capture it, the only chance we might have of ever seeing that again is if it pops up in front of us again, but it might never pop up in front of us again. So I've learned the value when I hear something, see something, read something, find something valuable, I grab it and I keep it and I use it. I'd encourage you to take notes. I'm also interested in reaching and climbing. I want to reach the pinnacle of my career, and I feel I have a lot more to go. I went to the US about 4 years ago thinking I was a good speaker, thinking I was a really good speaker. I saw a whole other level. that told me I wasn't even at 50% of what I might be capable of, what standards are out there. I am very motivated now to do this, but I wasn't always motivated to climb the career ladder. I kind of wanted it, but I wasn't invested in the process myself. And what happened to me was, very simply, when I was 27, and I would imagine a lot of people here are kind of in that kind of general age category, in their 20s possibly, but that photograph, that's a photograph of me at the age of 27. I'm the guy on the right-hand side of the photograph. Anybody recognize the man on the left? If you do, just type his name into chat. If you recognize the gentleman, actually that photograph of all places, who is that person? Do you know? Just type his name into chat if you do. Very famous sportsman. In fact, he was the world #1 in his sport. Anybody know who he is? Or sorry, who was? Yeah, I see the answer there. Sevi Ballesteros. Ironically, that photograph was taken in none other than County Kilkenny in 1995. I was 5-6 years into my career at this stage, but if I'm being honest, I wasn't happy. I also, as I reflected years later, I realized there was clues to potential failure. I wasn't getting anywhere in my career. And I realized there was a number of reasons why. The #1 reason was I wasn't invested in it. I was waiting for it. I just presumed it would happen. And I went into a job, a good job, but I got stuck at a certain level. And I realized I was doing the minimum. I was in a comfort zone. And interestingly, when I went into that job, I was a lot lighter than I am in that photograph. In that photograph, I'm 4.5 stone heavier than I am today. That day, I smoked 50 cigarettes. That's a symptom of how I was living my life. And I realized I wasn't happy, so I decided as a result of this to take up running. And I took up exercise to lose the weight at the time. I didn't realize it, but and this is not my line. I'd love to say it's my line because I think it's a great line, but it's not mine. It's in your moments of decision that your destiny is shaped, in the decisions that you make in your life. And I made a decision. I didn't realize that it would be a catalyst. Every journey starts somewhere. And the decision I made, and I'm going to come back to it later on in a big way, I took up running. I took up exercise. I just happened to exercise through running. But immediately I felt better. I got a number of key learnings, which I'm keen to share with you. I got a number of key learnings. So what I discovered is, #1, big learning. I could have picked any day to change. But the very first day I went running, I managed to do 5 kilometers. I immediately felt better than I did before I went running. And I realized, oh my gosh, if I want to be better, here's the key learning I got. And this applies to anything. Anything. I just happen to be speaking about health or fitness. What I discovered is to be better. To be better. Oh, wasn't expecting that. Have to get better. To be better, I'm going to let that fall on the ground. We have to get better. This is life. So to be better, we have to get better. To be fitter, we have to get fitter. To be healthier, we have to get healthier. To be in a better career, I realized I have to go and get it. I've been waiting for it. I said, Gerry, you have to go and do something about this. You have to invest in the process yourself. Second learning I got, #2, and I got this out of exercise, behavior. Behavior matters. What you do in your days. As soon as I began to change my daily behavior, everything started to change. I changed my daily behavior in exercise. I changed my daily behavior in my eating habits. I started to eat better, started to feel better. I started to change the time I got out of bed in the morning. I got up earlier, which got me ahead of things, of myself, maybe of other people. I began to change my attitude. I became a nicer person to be around. I became more of a team player. I went a couple of years later, I went back to college because I realized my behavior matters. I got promoted as a result. They started paying me more money. I'm going to come back to what was happening there. But what I've discovered is your daily behavior is the petrol on the road to success. What the things you do in your day. It's not rocket science. I believe it's identify what do I need to do if I want to get there? What are the things I need to be doing in my days? I began to set, and James mentioned it, goals. I set a goal at the end of 1998, something I dreamt about for 20 years. In fact, 23 years to be exact. And I set it as a goal. I wrote it down. I wrote down, what do I need to do to achieve this goal? I said, who do I need to get around me to help me achieve this goal? I gave it a deadline. Something I dreamt about for 23 years. Achieved it in less than 6 months when I got focused. So the extra learnings I was getting was, we got to get focused. We got to identify what it is exactly we want to achieve. And number 4, I got rewarded for the effort. Life rewards us for effort. If you're interested to know the number 1 strategy I've discovered, if you want to reach your true potential, I've learned the most important, in my opinion, that we need to master. The number 1 skill we need to master. If you're interested in hearing what that is, just type "I'm interested" into chat. I'm interested. I'm going to share with you the number 1 thing I believe we need to master. If you're interested in that, just type "I am interested." Excellent. I hope you've written something down that you find interesting already. Lots of people interested, so I better share it. Before I share it, thank you for your feedback there. It's great to get that energy from the chat box. It lets me know there's people here. So thank you for that. And if you can turn on your camera, that'd be super too, but don't feel you have to. But if you did, it'd be great. So before I share the number 1 thing I've discovered, and I'm going to prove this, I'm not just going to talk about it. I'm going to prove it in the next 5 minutes or less. So I'm going to share a theory with you, and then I'm going to back it up. Before I share the number 1 thing I believe you need to master, if you want to reach your true potential in your career, number 1 skill. Before I share it, can I invite you to stand up, please? I'm going to invite you to stand up. I'm going to take it you are standing up as we speak. You're emerging from your chair because I can't see you. So I'm going to ask you to, when you're ready, to raise your hands as high as you can. As high as you can. As high as you can. Thank you. Take a seat. Take a seat. I just thought you might like a stretch. No, I'm assuming you're sitting back down, and there actually was a reason why I did that. I shared with you that I was going to share the number 1 skill I believe we need to master. The number 1 skill, I believe. Let me ask you this question. If we did that again, and I offered you 50 euros, and all you had to do was go 1 inch higher than you did about 45 seconds ago. If you think you could do that, go 1 inch higher for 50 euros. Just type "I could" into the chat box. Just type, "Yes, Gerry, I could." If you agree that you could go 1 inch higher, 50 euros. Lots of people agree with me, which is super. Okay, so what if I said to you, on top of that inch, so we go and we do that inch, right? Sit back down, and I said, no, up on your feet again, and I'm going to offer you 500 euros if you can go another inch on top of the inch, but there's 500 euros at stake. If you think you could achieve that, just type "yes" into chat. Just type "yes" into chat. Ah, I see a strategy coming in there. I jump. Isn't that interesting? I think I'd have to jump. What I've discovered is, you see, because, and I did that for a reason, because I was very specific. I didn't just ask you to raise your hands. I asked you to raise them as high as you could. As high as you could. That's a very specific standard I'm looking for. It's not just raise your hand. I said, as high as you can. I said it 3 times. This is to reach your true potential in your career. And now we realize, oh, maybe I could do more if I was willing to stretch and maybe willing to jump being a metaphor for doing more or thinking outside the box. Maybe there's even more in me if I'm willing to stretch myself. And if I hit a wall on the route to my career where I really want that job or that salary or that area of expertise, but I'm struggling with it, maybe we got to think outside the box, like jumping or standing on a chair. It's a metaphor, but it's a very powerful, in my opinion, metaphor. Number 1 skill to master. Our success in anything is determined by how uncomfortable. Our success in our careers in anything is determined by how uncomfortable you are prepared to get. So I believe the number 1 skill to master is the skill of discomfort, to be willing to be uncomfortable. I'm very privileged now, what I do in my job. This is my career. You're looking at it right here. It's a typical, albeit normally it's in the room. James and I were chatting about this beforehand, but I do presentations. I do speaking and programs and leadership programs and public speaking seminars and workshops and all those kind of things. And I'm very privileged to work in the corporate sector. I'm very privileged to work with great companies like Alltech, like Thornton, like MSD, like Medtronic, amazing companies. I speak in venues like this quite often in the normal world, just not in the last 7 months. Very privileged to be speaking in beautiful countries and cities and stadiums. Like I've been in Switzerland, in the US, working in the US, and here. I promised you I'd share with you proof about a willingness to be uncomfortable. Our success in our career is determined by how uncomfortable we are prepared to get. Yes, I've spoken here and here, all these beautiful places. That's who I am now. 13 years into my career, this is where it all began. That room. The greatest talk I've ever given is in that room. My first ever formal presentation. Because I'm very comfortable in this environment now, and I mean comfortable in, I feel that I belong here in front of people speaking about whatever. I'm a professional speaker. And the last 15 years, sorry, the last 11 years, that was 15 years ago. But in the last 11 years, I delivered over 2,000 presentations, but my first ever one in that room. I'm very comfortable and confident in this space now, but not then. Some things might happen in your career. You might question, do I really have to do that? I didn't want to do this talk. I had a completely different business. I was a bit different person. But this thing arrived at my door, a speaking presentation in that business I had. I didn't want to do it. Oh, by gosh, did I not want to do it. Here's the reason why. Remember I said your success in your career is determined by, etc. I was pathologically fearful of public speaking. Me. I was so afraid of it 2 days before I went into that room to do my first ever talk in September 2005. I was so afraid 2 days before. It was such an ordeal in my mind, so anxious, so afraid. I had to go to a hypnotist to give me the courage to address an audience. 4 people. Our success in our career is determined by how uncomfortable we are prepared to get. I started this business, decided to do this in 2009. Irrelevant how that journey came about. made the decision 2009, I'm going to be a professional speaker. I'm going to speak about what I'm going to speak about. No clients, no money, no expertise, had ideas of what I could speak about. I had experience, but no expertise in terms of how to create a business in this. So I've been trying to be uncomfortable ever since, and to have built it to where I've built it to. With, on the face of it, no real talent for it. Maybe the only talent I had for it was to be able to speak, and some experience that I had, and then some things I've done since. I've invested a lot in the process since. All those things were uncomfortable things. They challenged me to do them. But I realized going back to 27, I can't wait for this to happen. That's not the way careers work. How would you know if you were uncomfortable in your career or not? Can I invite you to fold your arms, please? Just regular way like this. Fold your arms just regularly like this. If you were writing now, I'd ask you to write down how does that feel, and you type in words like comfortable, grand, usual, normal, etc. I'd like to share with you what I believe your career, if you're genuinely interested in your career climbing, if you want to reach the pinnacle, I'd like to share with you in about 15 seconds what I believe it will need to feel like on that journey. And if it feels like it's about to feel, that's a sign you are committed to it. If it feels like it feels right now, that's a sign that maybe you're waiting for it. And I don't think that the universe works that way. I think it needs to be the new way that's going to be in about 5 seconds. Not this feeling now, the normal, usual, grand. Please fold them the opposite way. Fold them the opposite way for a moment, please. Now, you can release them. And I'd like you to type in chat as quickly as you can a word or two to describe the feeling when you went to do it the second way. What words would you use to describe it? Not normal, odd, uncomfortable, uneasy, different. Different but doable. Very interesting. Odd, a bit strange and uncomfortable, but not painful. Awkward. Not natural. Ambidextrous. The same. There's always one. Excellent. Weird. Yeah. Any more words? I believe at some level, the things you do in the future to get a higher level, remember, to be better, we have to get better. They're going to feel at some level weird, different, unusual, not normal. That's the process we have to go through. I'd encourage you to embrace that process. That's a sign. If it feels like that, that tells me you're committed to it. If it feels like this, that would tell me you possibly are waiting for it. And we can all do it because we learn to fold our arms at one stage like this. It might be mildly uncomfortable, somewhat uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. For me at the beginning, it was incredibly uncomfortable, standing up in front of 4 people when I was shaking like a leaf. But it's a process I've gone through now. And I was years going through it, if I'm being honest. I was years before I overcame the fear. That's being honest. But I got through it, and now I've completely got through all those feelings that you mentioned there. But that's a sign. If you were to predict things, I'd love your thoughts on this, and I'd love you to share them in chat. If you were to predict things that I believe you might need or could value being uncomfortable in, give me some examples of what that might look like. What kind of things would you be uncomfortable in, do you think? What would be an example? Anybody share an example with me? If you were uncomfortable in your career, what would you be doing? Just share an example or two in chat. Taking a job with no previous experience, speaking, promoting an idea that's controversial, something new, doing presentations. These are brilliant examples. Have we any more? Setting high targets. One more. Taking over management of a long-established team. I like that. And it's probably going to feel different. Hard to get used to. But we can do it. Speaking to those more experienced than you. Yeah. Let me give you some examples of what I might think it might be. It could be maybe your attitude, maybe breaking the status quo, putting yourself out there. I love these examples. It could be 10,000 different things. It could be getting the right people around you, maybe to tell you what you might need to improve. That's one of the most valuable things I think you could possibly do. And I've done that in my business. I've got people around me tell me how I can be better a speaker. It's very hard to fix what you're not aware of. So I got to get them to sit in the back of a conference, tell me afterwards what I need to hear. It could be my attitude. It could be seeing me as a solution. It could be my education. It could be doing more than you get paid to do. It could be being a team player when it feels uncomfortable. Everything we do to standards. Poor standards, average standards, good standards. But there's a standard above good, which is so poor, I'm being very delicate with this now, because it doesn't like me today. Poor, average, good. Excellent. Excellent. If you want to achieve your absolute potential, though, you want to achieve your true potential in your career, I'd encourage you to have a mindset and an attitude and an action to be taking actions to prove this, to align with the fact that there's one more. There's another one that sits up here. And I discovered this around 20 years ago, the highest standard of all. And I decided to get really focused. And I'll tell you what it is in a minute. I got really focused in family. I said, I'm going to reach this standard in my family. I'm going to reach this standard in contribution. I'm going to reach this standard in health. And at the time I got big into running. I said, I'm going to bring this into extreme sport, because we did into extreme running and Ironman triathlons and those kind of things. I said, I'm going to bring that standard to those things. And I ended up doing 32 marathons in 32 days, because it became a big focus in my life. And I brought it into work. I said, if I'm going to spend a quarter of my life in a place called work. You see, when I started to ask more of myself in my late 20s, I got all those things I spoke about, but I got something else. I got happier. We get happiness from growth. I was in a job. I went in and did the minimum every day. I didn't realize it. You and I are like flowers. We are. Flowers can only do one of two things. What are the two things a flower can do? There's only two things it can do. What are they? Two things. Let me know in chat when you're ready. What are the two things a flower can do? Bloom or die. Absolutely. Grow or die. Yeah. And I didn't realize it, but because I was doing the minimum, I'm like a flower. I didn't realize it. My motivation was slowly, microscopically, but it was microscopic every day, piled on top of each other. I was getting less and less motivated. And I realized as soon as I started to change myself and demand more, get uncomfortable, I went back to college for a couple of years part-time in 1997. That's the opposite of that. That's growing. I started to get a better experience in work. I got happier in work. I'd encourage you to have a growth mindset. Carol Dweck speaks about it in her book, Mindset. Fixed mindset, growth mindset. I had a fixed mindset where I was just, I wasn't open-minded, didn't have a great attitude. I did the minimum. I began to develop a growth mindset where I began to see, I'm going to reach my potential. I'm going to be a nicer person. I'm going to grow. I'm going to get feedback. I got so much happier in my career. This is an added value, I believe. Why should we try and reach more in our careers? Yes, we might make more money, meet new people, go to new places, but I believe your happiness index will go up as well if you challenge yourself to reach higher levels, whatever you define that as. I promised you 6 things over the 2 days. And I'm going to dig into 2 of them now for a few minutes. I'm going to share the 3rd one, but we're going to really get into the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th in the second half. If you're enjoying it, just I'd love to get some feedback. Are you enjoying this? I'm hoping you are, because I can't see anybody, can't hear anybody. I'm hoping I'm not just speaking to myself. If you're enjoying it, just give me some feedback. Is it excellent? Love it. Thank you so much. It really means a lot when I can see what people are getting and just your interactions. They mean an awful lot. Brilliant. Thank you so much. I also know you're still here, that my Wi-Fi hasn't frozen like it did yesterday. So I was gone for about 20 seconds. I was just chatting away, thinking there was a group of people in front of me, and I was like that for 30 seconds. But now, thank you so much for that. Okay, now, number one. Now, I've already covered this, and I've already covered the second one, but I just want to put them here as points, as signposts for you. If you like them, maybe you could capture them. Richard Branson. I'm sure we might be familiar with Richard Branson, entrepreneur, businessman, Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Records, all those kind of things. Anne O'Leary, the CEO of Vodafone in Ireland. Michael O'Leary, we would know as the head of the Ryanair Group. Andrew Revington. You probably don't know Andrew Revington. Andrew's a close friend of mine, and he's a dairy farmer. He lives about 10 miles from where I am now. They all have one thing in common that I see, that I think they hugely value, and it really helps them in their business. Number one, they in their days, almost every day. Andrew Revington does it very early in the morning. My understanding is Michael O'Leary does it at lunchtime in the normal world. I'm not sure when Anne does it. I'm not sure. Actually, I know for actually, sorry, I do know when Richard Branson does it. He does it twice. He does it twice a day. And I believe this is one of the reasons why they get ahead. And this is nothing to do with your career, but it's everything to do with your career. It's nothing to do with business, but it's everything to do with business. It's a word beginning with the letter E. And I've spoken about it already at length. In my opinion, that's everything to do with business. That's been the catalyst. And I know there's outliers out there. I know there's business people that achieve a lot that never exercise. But I know somebody that smoked 80 cigarettes a day and lived to be 85. It doesn't mean it's a good idea. The vast majority of people I've studied that have really got ahead in their lives and really got ahead in their careers, they have exercise, whatever it is to them. I didn't say sport, because sport is a personal thing, but the body loves exercise. When I brought this into my life, everything changed. Here's what I got out of it. I thought I was just taking up exercise to lose weight, but I got so much more than that out of it. That's the 32 marathon, sorry, I think I mentioned that. I became more confident. That's not me, by the way. That's an image I downloaded from Shutterstock. I became more ambitious. I became more energized. I became more motivated. And 2008, 2009, that other business I had, couldn't make it work. Incredibly difficult time for me in my career for about 3 years. But I've learned, for me, I exercise really early in the morning. So even though I had huge challenges going on in my career and in my business in 2008, 2009, 2010, even into 2011, because there was so much going on at the time that some of you might be old enough to remember, maybe not. But I was very strong every morning. 8 o'clock, I'd be at my desk, plenty of challenges, but so resilient and so energized because I'd already exercised that day. Exercise for me is something that gets your heart pumping. It could be different things for different people. It could be running, could be hiking, could be the gym, could be GA, could be swimming, could be dancing. We can think outside the box on this. It does not have to be sport. John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, he said this. He said, physical fitness is not only one of the keys to a healthy body, it is the basis of a creative and dynamic, intellectual activity. Physical fitness is not only one of the keys to a healthy body, it is the basis of a creative and dynamic intellectual activity. Second week in March this year. I'm sure we'd all remember Leo being on the news from the White House saying we're going into lockdown. I knew years ago I made this non-negotiable because I started to show up so much better. Everything started to change. And so this became like brushing my teeth. And I said, Gerry, now in the next month, I thought it was only going to last a month. Make sure you're exercising more than ever, because it's very easy to exercise when you're in the mood. But it's when we get sent these extra tests and maybe of our time, I realized that's even more reason to be doing the exercise, because I knew it would support me. When I thought it was going to be a month, it turns out we're 8 months into it. I would encourage you to make time for exercise in your life. Who here is into exercise? Just type yes into chat if you're already into exercise, whatever that may be for you. Lots of people. We've lots of people in this community that are obviously already aware of this. If it helps you in other areas of your life, if it helps you in other areas of your life, just type "it does" into chat. It does. Yeah, definitely helps clear the mind. Thanks for that feedback. Okay, here's an interesting statistic. People might say I'm too busy, but I believe it's the key to being even more energized, more productive when you do need to do the stuff that keeps you busy. And that's why my friend Andrew, incredibly busy, he's a big dairy farm, but he knows this is a key because he's on his feet all day. He knows he needs to be really physically fit for that. And he embraced this about 11 or 12 years ago. And he said it was a game changer for him. He used to be tired and now he's not tired. And yet he's still working these really long days. But it's because he's put this into his life. I'd encourage you, if you're not already, and if you are, keep it up. I'd encourage you to make it non-negotiable. 30 minutes of exercise is 2% of your day. 2%. Number 2. I learned this from a man called Jim Rohn, R-O-H-N. Jim Rohn. He said, we don't get paid by time. People think we get paid by time. We earn 10 euros an hour, 15 euros an hour, 50 euros an hour. He said, no, we don't. If you were to predict what he says, or maybe you have an idea on this yourself, what do you think we get paid for? Let me know in chat. If we don't get paid for time, what do we get paid for? I would agree with him 100%. I'm going to try and prove it in a minute. Output? Yeah. Any other words you would use? For doing your job, for the work done? If I said to you it was a word, productivity, contributing, we don't get paid for time, ability to make a difference, quality of work. Okay. I'm hoping you can see the letter V. He says, we don't get paid for time. Anybody predict what the word is? It's a word beginning with the letter V. What's the word? Bingo. Somebody's got it. We get paid by value. We get paid by value, not by time. We get paid by the value that we bring to the time. In 2013, my business, this business that I'm in now, thankfully, was at a certain level. I was very ambitious to advance it, and this is my career. So I decided to add more value. I went back to college at the age of 45, 44, 45. I'm struggling with the maths. I was either 44 or 45 for 3 years. It didn't suit me. Didn't have time for it. I didn't get on well in school when I was there the first time. Very challenged by school, very challenged academically. But I said, no, you got to add more value here. And I identified a 3-year journey in college. I said, if I want to get to that level, I got to do that, because I'm going to get knowledge there that will add more value. And if I add more value, maybe I'll add more numbers. And my business is now doing twice what I was doing in 2013, because I brought more value. And the great thing was I was immediately able to bring the value to my clients, because I was very specific about what I went back to study. Very specific. Organizational behavior, executive coaching, leadership. I was able to bring those immediately to my clients. And they started paying me more money because I was bringing more value. And the turnover of my business went up. If you want to have a more attractive career or attractive role, you want to make more money, then in my opinion, and I use the word, I'm sure you'll understand the context in which I'm using the word, we need to become more attractive. And we become more attractive by adding more value. If you want to go from 40,000 to 50,000, 60,000 to 70,000, assistant manager to manager, follower to leader, the key is to bring more value. It could be the attitude that you bring. It could be more of a team player. That's another way of adding value to a team. And I do a lot of work with leadership teams. It's part of what I do. I do a deep dive leadership programs over sometimes over months and months and months. And all the time, or most of the time, we end up talking about performance and people, not the academic skills, but maybe the team skills, being a team player, the attitude, the contribution, resilience, tenacity. She's tenacious. She just doesn't let something not get done. That adds more value. Maybe it's a willingness to be uncomfortable, to put yourself forward for something, to get a new skill, maybe do a public speaking program as an example. It could be bringing in more clients. Go and work for a company, bring in more clients, you're adding more value. How about you put the clients in front of me and I'll do the work. Maybe bring in customers, maybe give ideas to people. That's adding value. Here's an idea. What, have you ever considered this, rather than just waiting for ideas to come? Here's another one. When you bring a problem to maybe your manager, your leader, bring a solution as well. Adds more value. Leaders love that. They may or may not go with it, but they love it. Chances are they might go with it. So there are two things. Make time for exercise and value. I'm almost done. So in less than 5 minutes, Marcus, I might hand over to you if that works. But I'm going to share the third one with you, but I'm going to dig into it the next time. Who here has heard of Warren Buffett? If you've heard of Warren Buffett, say, I have into the chat box. I have into chat. Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett. So 5 or 6 people have heard of Warren Buffett. He's an investor. He buys companies, like he buys big companies. He owns a company called Berkshire Hathaway, and they buy companies that they identify as having potential. And then they bring their skills and the company goes up in value. And the last time I checked, the company was worth about $65 billion. He's 90 years of age. He's as hungry now as he was when he was 20. Still lives in the same house as when he got married in 65 years ago, whatever it was. Incredibly successful man. Works very closely with another guy called Charles Unger. They own Berkshire Hathaway. $65 billion. I'm going to cover this the next day. Actually, I'll tell you what it is in a minute, okay? And then I'm going to hand over to Marcus. Before I do, though, I'm interested to know, I promise you I'll tell you what it is in a minute. In fact, I have a slide to show you in a moment. But I'm interested to know, because I'm almost done. I hope you can join us in January. I promise you, I'm going to share this now, but I'm going to dig into it. And then I got 3 more things that I think you will really, really find valuable. I want to add more value here. If there was a number 1 takeaway from today, my time with you, what's the best thing you've heard, the most important thing you've heard, the most insightful or the most valuable tip you might have got. I'd love your feedback. It's key takeaway time. What's your key takeaway from my time, the first half, with you today? Please let me know in the chat box when you're ready. Invest in your career. Behavior matters. Being uncomfortable leads to growth. Don't be afraid to be uncomfortable. Get uncomfortable to make progress. It's all down to you. Any more feedback from me? What else are you getting? Value. When you bring the problem, bring the solution. Isn't it interesting? People get different things. Any more feedback from me when you're ready? Number one takeaway for you today so far. And I know Marcus has got some gold coming up in a few minutes. No matter how tired I am, make time to exercise. One more. Have we one more bit of feedback? Bring more value by upskilling and teamwork and behaviors. Have goals. I like that. Yeah. Growth mindset. Have a growth mindset. Just do it. Be fully invested. I didn't see myself. Now I do. I now see myself as the solution to my problems. I used to do that. I now see myself, well, what can I do here? What value can I bring? What could I change, or what could I improve? What extra value could I bring rather than the other person? How can I grow here? What can I learn from this? I'll finish on this. Let me show you a picture of Mr. Buffett. Billionaire Warren Buffett says this one skill will boost your career value by 50%. If you go into his office, you will only find one certificate on his wall. Just one. And he says the reason that's there is because that's the most valuable one. In the 70 years of his career, he said, that's the most valuable thing I've done to boost my career. Does anybody know what it is? I'd be interested to know. Maybe somebody here knows already. So let me know what the certificate is. I'll share it with you if you don't know, if we don't have that answer in the room. Does anybody know what it is? There's only one certificate on his wall. On a driving test, good answer. And I think he did it in the early 1950s. And he did this course. It was a course. It was a nighttime, part-time course that he did in the early 50s. I think it was in New York. He did it, I think. And he did it with a man called Dale Carnegie. Number one skill in his book, public speaking. That's number 3. What I'm going to do here the next time is I'm going to give you some really simple but very powerful tips. Things you could do instantly, like the principles of what great communication look like, because you're using them in interview skills, you're using them in team meetings, if you're pitching to customers, if you're leading, giving a town hall to your department or the team. We need these skills, the skills of communication. And I'm going to share a couple of very valuable things that I've learned, because my entire business is dependent on being good at communication. It's my entire business. If I'm not a good communicator, so I believe the skills of communication, and he says public speaking skills, that's the one qualification that's on his wall. He said that's the most valuable thing he's ever done in his career. So that'll be number 3, and we've got 3 more. I'll give you a flavor. I'll just tell you what one more of them is. It'll be, when we get here, you're going to see me to write the word. So this is public speaking. Here you're going to hear me talk about network, and I'll explain exactly what that means and the power of this to advance your career when we meet in January. We might be doing questions later on, but for now, I want to thank you for your time. And I'm not sure, I might be handing it back to Barbara or James, I'm not sure, or maybe it's straight into Marcus. So thank you everybody for your time at this stage.
That's fantastic, Gerry. Thanks very much. I think there's a lot of food for thought there. So we'll probably do now, if We'll have Marcus give his presentation, and then we'll have a Q&A session for both Gerry and Marcus at the end. So I'll invite Marcus now to share his screen. Thanks. Thanks again, Gerry.
Thanks, Niall, and thanks, Gerry. Thanks, Anne-Marie, Barbara, and everybody at ASA. Delighted to be here this morning. I found that really, really insightful for myself, and I suppose I'm going to share some tips or different pieces of advice that I could give, or that I wish I could have given to myself maybe at a younger age. Just want to say again, thanks very much, Gerry. Thanks, everybody, and I'm just going to kick on. My name is Marcus O'Halloran. I am Executive Director at AgriAware. My background is I've graduated from UCD in 2017. I studied food and agribusiness management, and I was the auditor of AgSoc in 14-15 and president of the Students' Union in 15-16. I suppose I wanted to mention those two things as they have been two of the things that kind of have shaped me and have been hugely beneficial for me in my time and career, and kind of gave me an outlook from the start. And I might just get to a bit more why I find them important as we go. So the Students' Union in UCD, I was elected there at 22 years of age, and not many people would know, but the Students' Union in UCD is actually a company that turns over €4 million a year. This was something I wasn't overly aware of when I ran for office, and it's something I wasn't aware of, that at 22 I was going to be CEO of a company that turns over €4 million, number one, and number two, that there was actually going to be about 80 people that I was going to have responsibility for, and 12 of those directly, or 17 directly, apologies. So just to give a context of what the Students' Union in UCD is, it's two companies. One is SUL, which is Students' Union Limited. This consists of the voluntaries, the sabbatical officers, your senior staff, and there's an annual turnover there of about €1 million. The other part then is Commercial Services Limited, which is your shops. There's 3 shops on campus. There's about 80 staff here. Annual turnover about €3 million a year. And just a fun fact about the Students' Union shops in UCD is that there is more insomnia coffee sold in that library shop in UCD than there is all over the country. So that'll just give you a flavour of how big that actually is. So my current position, I am the Executive Director at AgriAware. And for anybody that doesn't know what AgriAware is, we are an agri-educational body here based in Bluebell. And our mission statement is to create a national awareness of the value of modern agriculture and farming, the stewardship of the environment, and animal welfare and the benefits of Irish nutritious food. 2 of our programs are in our schools are the Incredible Edibles. For anyone that doesn't know, this is a horticulture-based program. This teaches kids how to grow, sow, and cook their own food. And second piece then is AgriAware's National Open Farm Day, which takes place on the Maybank holiday weekend every year. And what that does is it aims to bring rural dwellers or urban dwellers and kids to farms around cities and towns with high urban populations, and give them a feel of what a family farm is. So I suppose the first, I've about 5 or 6 points that I want to make, and the first one is to keep an open mind. One of the things Gerry actually said, which I wasn't aware he was going to say, was our success in anything is determined by how uncomfortable we get, or uncomfortable we're willing to make ourselves. And my first job was actually in IFA Countryside. For anybody that wouldn't know what that is, IFA Countryside is, it looks after a base membership of 3,000 people that actively pursue game and countryside sports. So in other words, hunting, fishing, shooting, anything like that. I had no previous knowledge of game or conservation, and I didn't even hold a firearms license or a gun license. I had no idea how to level with these people, but had to jump in full force and figure it out fairly quickly as to how I was going to do that. So the successes of what I would have considered successes in that role was that I was able to stabilize and grow the membership. So I was able to get down, learn the lingo, and level with the people that were involved. We maintained a connection with the rural countryside users. And for me, the biggest success was that I was able to prove an ability in a field that I had no idea of. And when we speak about climbing the career ladder today, the first part of this that I thought about when I spoke to Niall was that, I need to step on the ladder first. And this mightn't be an area that I actually necessarily have any interest in or any passion or desire for, but my own thoughts at the time were, if I can prove myself here, even in the slightest, if I can get some bit of a success in this role, well, then haven't I a better success of having success in a role that I am comfortable with, or something that I am passionate about. So just a few messages, I suppose, from that first piece would be, one, it's easy to stick with what you know. You know, dairy farmers working in the dairy industry, beef farmers in the beef industry. Like, as humans, we have a tendency, I think, to be like, the comfortable option is always nearly the most favorable option. But as far as your career goes, my suggestion or my advice would be, if you haven't gotten on that ladder or wherever you are in that, you know, it's never a set in stone answer to say no to something that you're not comfortable with. I think, because I do believe that if you can prove yourself in an area you're not comfortable, you have a better chance in when you are. For me as well, it was an opportunity to broaden the horizon. It was something, again, no idea about, and it's an area now that I do know about, and it's you know, something I can hold a conversation with about somebody, and it's an opportunity to learn and prove yourself in another field, as I already said. So that being said, the one thing that I would have said for that employment also is to look for continuous opportunities to enhance your skill set. So while in an employment like that, while you may not overly enjoy it or love it or like it, while you are getting down with it, you know, there's an opportunity to enhance yourself. And is that through Springboard or Skillnet, whatever that is, there is an opportunity to do that, and that time should be used effectively to do so. So, as Gerry said, Gerry mentioned exercise earlier on. For me, and this is just purely, again, this is my own opinion. This isn't something that everybody has to take away, but this is something that would that I would have used, or I use actively, as something, you know, in my back pocket. To keep active is number one. You know, healthy body, healthy mind. That's a pathway to success for me. You know, if that's team sports, as Gerry said earlier on, it doesn't have to be sports. Sport isn't for everybody. But, you know, individual running, personal training, fitness classes, gym work, hill walking, whatever that is, it gives you a time to think, gives you time to analyze, and it gives you a time to have a clear mind, or to clear the mind, and it lifts stresses. And, you know, I always find in that second kilometre, when you're running 5K or whatever it is that you run, or your walk, I always find it's in that second kilometre you've gotten over the initial surge in the heartbeat. You're starting to think, everything comes a bit more clear, and suddenly you're breaking down everything that's going on around you. And for me, it's something that I will always do for as long as I'm able to do, is go for a run, go for a walk, climb a hill, do something that will allow me to take that time to analyze what's going on at work. You know, and sometimes that actually, it's the times that I have the most clear thoughts, and I can analyze situations that have happened that week or that day or whatever, and figure out maybe what I would have done differently the next time around. I don't have the science behind the next point that I'm going to make, but it's something for me that I really find is important. I think you need to take control of the food that you eat and how often you eat it every day. I was reading something recently, and it was all about this. You'll find backup articles to this in the likes of Women's Health magazine, Men's Health magazine. There's a lot of Instagram accounts that speak about stuff like this as well. But, you know, maintaining a constant supply of energy throughout the day and not overindulging. What I mean by that is, you know, we're all guilty of having a huge lunch, and next thing we're finished come 3 o'clock, and we have to go for the coffee machine and a bar of chocolate. And what that is an overindulgence of carbohydrates, and your energy is just left off really quick, and suddenly you hit a slump. As I said, I'm not going to go into that. There's a bit more of a science behind that, and I'm not a nutritionist, so I'll leave that to the experts. But there's two parts of that. One is it controls the energy that you have within yourself throughout the day. And number two, taking control of what you actually eat is also a way of controlling spending of disposable income, which is something that I will come to just a little later on. So as Gerry actually, the last point he put down on the board before he left was networking. For me, networking is a seriously important aspect of, you know, climbing the career ladder, or enhancing your career, or anything at all within your career. You know, there's three outfits that I would see career-wise, which is ASA, Macra, and the IFA. I think these are important because, you know, they allow you to build and maintain networks. It keeps the agricultural agenda on the mind, and it opens new conversations on trends and different things like that. So from my time in IFA, I would have noticed, like, one week we would have had a meeting on dairy farming, the next it could have been on poultry, it could have been pigs. It changes, you know, and I know that's the way that a lot of organizations work. Being a dairy farmer at home, learning about poultry and learning about what happens on Ireland's tomato farms and things like that is something that was always of interest to me, because I just find, you know, it's constantly broadening the horizon. It's very easy to keep your eyes focused on what's going on inside the farm gate or inside the office door. I also think that podcasts are a huge way of developing your awareness or expanding your awareness of the knowledge of the industry itself. And there's 3 podcasts in particular that I actually listen to, and one of them is the ASA podcast, believe it or not, recently. I haven't gotten to listen to the most recent one now, forgive me, but the podcast with Peter Byrne was actually one of the best podcasts I've ever listened to. The Dairy Edge by Emma Louise Coffey and Chagas is a brilliant podcast to listen to. There's a podcast there on greenhouse gas emissions at the moment. It's second to none. Would refer anybody back to it. And there's a more rural podcast then called Out the Gap, which is run by a guy actually in my local parish. And what he does is he speaks to people on, you know, he speaks to different farmers every week. One would be speaking to somebody who's selling eggs, another tomato farmer, another a dairy farmer that's in robots or whatever. But what that all does for me is it keeps the ag agenda on the mind. It builds awareness about what's going on in the industry, and it helps to expand you as, I suppose, it helps to expand you as a person for when you're having those conversations. Why is this all important, you might ask? Well, for me, the first meeting with an employer is one of the most important. There is an informal aspect to that meeting with your employer that will give a sense of the type of person that you are. Are you outgoing? Are you knowledgeable? Are you up to speed with trends? You know, there's a lot of stuff that can be said. I can remember my first interview was 95% about what was happening in the world of agriculture, what happened with the GAA at the weekend or sport or whatever, and, you know, trends with vegan campaigns or whatever it was. And there was 5% of that time, which was, you know, 5 minutes was given speaking about the actual job itself. So, you know, I think it's important to network. I think it's important to build relationships, to expand your knowledge of the industry as a whole, so that when you actually go and speak to an employer, when an employer speaks to you, their first impression of you is very important. But you will have the tools in your back pocket to make sure that that first impression is one that is positive, and it's a knowledgeable first impression for those. So this is one point that if I actually could go back and speak to 21-year-old me, would be one of the biggest things I could drive home, and it's to be money savvy. And I can't stress this point enough to anybody between the age of 20 and 30 or whatever, is that you need this second, if you're not already, to start saving immediately. And I say this because I think that, you know, it's just so important. You would never realize that when you need that bulk of savings. So set up a savings account immediately. It needs to become a priority to be financially conscious. And I'm going to get to that in the next slide as well, as to why I think this is important. But you won't believe it, 50 to 100 euros a week, start at 22, by the time you're 28, you'll have 30 grand sitting there. It might sound like a lot of money now of 100 euros a week at that age, but be realistic. Your career path could change. The area you work in could change. You might want to build a house. If you have to suddenly move Dublin from a regional area at the age of 28 and you've 30 grand sitting there in an account, well, then you have the option maybe to think, do I buy or do I rent, you know? And it's always nicer to have those options. And if, for me, being at home, it's build is what the next stage is. And, you know, starting that process a couple of years back will allow me to do that in the next couple of years too. So I just think that it's important to look out for yourself in all of that, in that you are able to do those things when you want. So this is my last slide, and you'd be delighted to hear, is to set realistic goals for yourself. So they need to be self-reflective and they need to be achievable. So the key areas that I think that you need to set goals are, as we said already, activity or exercise. This is a really important thing. You know, a goal for me this year was to run 10K or to get to a 10K. Now, believe it or not, I played sport all my life and never have sat down or never have just got up and ran 10K. It's always been 5Ks, 7Ks, never a 10. The goal needs to be set, like 5-week training plan, get to work, get going, stick to it, and in 5 weeks time, you're at it or whatever. That goal needs to be reflective of yourself though. If you can only run 1K now, you need to, set a goal of running 5K in 6-8 weeks time, get a plan in place and, get moving. Learning, continuous learning, as we said earlier on about, the springboard courses available, there's back to college. Continuously give yourself that opportunity that you can broaden your horizon to enable yourself to climb that career ladder. Number 3, on your career, again, this is very much linked with number 2 in that your learning patterns will enable you to advance your career. Your knowledge of what's going on in the industry will enable you to advance your career. And number 4, the last area that I'd speak about is financially. And this is what I was speaking about, is that you need to set goals financially to, say, as I said, start saving €100 a week at 22. By the time you're 28, you'll have 30 grand there. These are all things that have to be tailored to you, but they have to be achievable. There's no point saying that I'm going to save 500 quid every month when it's not realistic. If you've car loans going out, if you've whatever, you need to set something that you can measure, you can achieve, and is reflective to what you can do. That's pretty much what I have to say. I'm more than happy to take any questions. And again, I would like to thank ASA and Niall and everybody else for having me here.
That is brilliant, Marcus. Thanks very much. I think, geez, you really hit a chord on a few simple things that can really be done now at this stage in your career to have a big impact both now and in the future. What I'd like to do now, guys, we have a few minutes for questions and answers. So if anyone on the call here would like to put a question in the Q&A tab at the bottom for either Marcus or Gerry, I'll ask it. I have one come in, and that's for Marcus actually. And what inspired you? I actually that's to both speakers. Like, what inspires you earlier in your career and today?
I'm happy to go first if you want, Marcus. So you can hear me again?
Yeah, perfect, Jim.
Great. Okay, thanks, Niall, and thanks for the question. What inspired me, it's probably a bit of a deep answer, but when I started exercise, it kind of woke me up. It just triggered something in my brain. And I used to, and thankfully I still do, I exercise very early in the morning, kind of 5:30, 6 o'clock is when I tend to be out there. And I began to just experience a whole new way of living. And the expression I use is I woke up, and I woke up to something really empowering and important. And I became consciously aware of the fact that I'm alive. I started to put more effort in, and life started to reward me. And I realized, oh my gosh, I'm not here for a long time, because like if we get 40 years in our career, it goes that quickly. And I realized, oh my gosh, I need to make the most of this, because now that I'm putting in more effort, I'm getting so much better experience, and things are really starting to happen in my career. I was getting happier. So I think I woke up is my answer, and I realized, oh my gosh, I'll be as happy as I decide I'm going to be in my life. And if I want to be happier, well, then I've got to make it happen for myself.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I think I share a lot of what Gerry said there. Like, as far as I'm concerned, I'm the creator of my own destiny in many ways. There's no point me sitting back and waiting for someone else to put it all in front of me. For me, it's very much about what inspires me is to do more, to get better. And it's the more I do, the better chance I have of achieving. And I don't know necessarily what inspires me, but what inspires me is or the goal is to do as much as possible that will enable me to advance my career as far as possible, and that's pretty much it, really. It's not a huge answer.
That's brilliant. Quick question coming in there from the chat bar. What would you advise a recent graduate who's in a role but unsure as to where it's going? Now it says that for Marcus, but I'd probably like Gerry's input in this as well, please. So Marcus, if you want to go first.
It's what advice you'd give to a graduate that's unhappy in their role, Niall, is it?
Yeah, so probably someone after coming in and starting their first job. It's happened to nearly everyone, and you're probably at the stage you're probably seeing people you're in college with moving jobs, and you're looking over your shoulder saying, "Jesus, are they doing better than me? Do I have to change as well?" So, how do you get over that, or what would your own advice be on that?
Yeah, well, just even going back to the slides, the first job I did wasn't a job that I overly enjoyed. It was a job, but it was a means of being in there, being in the industry, being relevant. I would say, just even referring back to those slides, there's opportunities to use that time maybe in that job. Like, it's not a time at the moment where the country is going to be booming with opportunities, I would imagine, with COVID. So use that time effectively. Maybe there's opportunities to advance your studies in different areas. Maybe there is Skillnet courses. Maybe there is Springboard courses that you can help yourself develop your skills in a different area. And I suppose that's what I'd be advising to do at the time being, would be to maybe help yourself develop those skills, or develop a different alternative set of skills that will give you a chance to change job.
Super. Brilliant. Gerry?
Yeah, to answer that one, just what comes to mind for me, when I was 17, 18, I actually went to the UK. Long story really short, I went to the UK and I ended up working in a pub full time. I didn't really want to work in this pub, but I was waiting on the promise of another job. And if I'm being honest, I didn't enjoy my time there. I found the work very challenging, but I'm so glad I did it. I'm so glad I did it, because it gave me I got something I didn't realize I was getting. I got great independence and strength to be independent in myself. But another thing I've learned is I would encourage people, even if you're in a job that you don't overly enjoy, bring the very best standard you can. The highest standard of all is the very best of your ability. And what I've discovered is, if you're willing to do that, small keys can open big doors. Somebody might see you doing something in that job that potentially could be your next employer, could potentially put an opportunity in front of you. So just because we mightn't be overly happy in it doesn't mean we can't bring a high standard to it. And I think if we do bring a high standard to everything that we do, I think then things will start to happen better than if that's what you're hoping for.
No, that's super. So another question here is there any advantages to entering either a grad program or a job straight from college?
I think myself personally, it's a different strokes for different folks. One here, one size doesn't fit all here. I never done a grad program. I went straight working. I have friends that done grad programs, and their careers have focused in that area specifically, and those grad programs have helped those develop in that career. For me, a grad program wasn't something that I had massive interest in. So I went down the road I went down, but I have to say, it's not one size fits all. Like, there obviously is advantages in some grad programs, and that you can get IMI qualifications and different things like that, and you can become more qualified and specific to that actual area. But I would say you really need to be sure that that's an area, or have an idea that that's an area anyway, that you would like to pursue the next couple of years of your career in, because it's important that once you commit to that grad program, there's two things that are going to happen. You're either going to go down and finish that grad program and continue in that career, or you're going to realize you don't like it and drop out of the grad program. So it's a 50-50 one there, and it's not a one size fits all for me anyway.
Okay, so Gerry?
Yeah, my simple answer to that would be, whatever decision you make is the right decision. And if it's a grad program, go in and commit totally to the grad program. And I'm going to be speaking about network next month. You never know who you might meet in the grad program, as an example. If it's to do something else, go into a job, it's to go into a job. Give that your very, very best. And I think it's Steve Jobs, people might remember as the joint founder of Apple. And he gave a very famous talk maybe 15 or 20 years ago, and he was talking about his career. And he said, when I look back on my career now, I can see how everything is joined up. but at the time it mightn't necessarily look that way. He said it's like a chain of dots. He said I can see how they're all connected now, and I can see the exact same thing. I can see it's when things went wrong in my career, went wrong in my life, that's when I made pivots, and that's when my business was really challenged in 2008, 2009, massively so. I'm so grateful now it happened, because I discovered skills and got uncovered talents I didn't even know I had. So I think whatever we do, embrace it, give it the very best you can, and maybe the next dot is just around the corner.
That's super. Just in that answer, Gerry, you talked about networking, and that leads us to the next question. In the current circumstances, networking is that much harder. Do you have any tips on how to get yourself out there at the moment?
Yeah, so I would imagine any networking we're doing is probably in an environment like this. And I was at an event a couple of weeks ago, and somebody said, you know, there was hundreds of people on this webinar, and there was a questions and answers opportunity, and they said, would anybody like to ask a question? And I genuinely was dying to ask a question. And would anybody like to come on camera? I jumped at the opportunity to go on camera. Now, the old me would not have done that, but now all of a sudden, I'm just an attendee there. Everybody can see me. I introduced myself, I said who I was, and I said, here's the question I'd like to pose. And in a way, I was networking with over 200 people in that 90 seconds that I had in front of them. So if we're willing to think outside the box, we can actually make networking opportunities happen.
That's brilliant. One for Marcus there. What advice would you give to someone who's maybe joined a graduate program and isn't happy?
It's, I suppose I'd refer back to my last question. You know, you need to figure out, I suppose, I think that it's important to write down maybe why you joined the program in the first place. It might not necessarily be the actual industry that you joined is the problem here. Is there an issue in the actual company that you're in that can be easily resolved, and is it a personal issue that if there was an issue resolved between somebody, a manager or staff member or whatever, would that make life easier? Or has this focus, or is your issue now with that you've realized that you actually hate this side of the industry? And if it is the issue that you actually hate this side of the industry, well, then I would say you need to consider things and maybe speak to somebody that's definitely more qualified than I am to give advice in this area. But if it's an issue with a staff member or something like that, or if there's different attitudes and things in the company, I wouldn't necessarily drop out because of something like that. You know, like speaking to a senior member or speaking to somebody that you can trust or confide in, you can resolve issues like that a lot more, you know, a lot easier. It's not worth giving up on a career that you had such a desire to go after because of something like that. You know, there has to be ways around that. So what I would say is you need to break it down into two things, whether is it an issue with the actual career path, or is it an issue with somebody that's there. And if it's somebody that's there, then you can resolve that. If it's the career path itself that you finally realize, or you realize now that this is totally not the career that I want, well, then you need to just probably rethink your situation. But I would speak to a number of people before I would just pull out. I would definitely speak to as many people as possible and get advice from that. And maybe somebody that has done a grad program that has been in the same situation as yourself previously.
That's perfect. Thanks very much, Marcus. One for Gerry now. What was the biggest obstacle to overcome in moving from being an employee to being self-employed? I'm sure there was plenty.
I remember I opened my own business in September 2003, completely different business. And I opened it on a Monday. And on the Thursday, I bought the local paper. And I saw in it that somebody I knew really, really well had a classified ad in it where they could have, this was one of my closest friends, they could have given me in my new business that piece of business, but they didn't. And they knew I was opening this business, but what they did was they went direct to market, whereas they could have put a few euros into my new business. This was my very first week, somebody I knew extremely well. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, if your friends won't give you business, you better be really up for this, working for yourself, Lark. But it was a great kind of reinforcer of, if this is going to be, it's up to me. And I just hardened my resolve to say, I'm going to make a success of this, but it may not be easy. It certainly won't be comfortable, but if it's going to be, it's up to me. And I think for me, in the early weeks and months, it was waking up on a Monday morning wondering, where am I going to make money? Because I had worked for a company for many, many years where the pay package used to arrive. So that was, that took a little bit of getting used to, but I realized there's an expression which is control the controllable. You know, if I want to be guaranteed to make money this week, what are things I need to be doing? And to focus on those rather than worrying about things that are outside of my control, focus on what is inside my control. So I just got busy doing things that were inside of my control, and thankfully it paid off.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. Marcus, another one for you there. What was the biggest challenge you had to overcome when starting out as a manager? And if you were to mentor yourself, what advice would you give to yourself back then?
My biggest challenge was definitely my age. Like when I joined the Students' Union, even at the start, I was 22, and I had people that were answering to me that were 55 and 60. And, you know, who's this new kid on the block? And that continued, I suppose, to some extent in my previous job as well, where there was older people involved, and you know, you really have to assert yourself. And the advice I'd give to myself if I was back again was, you know, you really just have to be assertive. You have to be sure in the decisions that you make that they're the right decisions to make, and it's through time of making decisions, and you know, looking for advice, being open, taking on the advice of people that have been in that job maybe a lot longer than you have, as to how to handle different situations. And I think that's one of the things that the biggest advice I could give to anybody is to if you're ever unsure, to always ask, you know, and always ask somebody who has done it before, or who has been in a situation like you before. But that, for me, it definitely would be to be assertive, but to be assertive in a fashion that you're sure that, you know, the decision you're making or whatever is something that is the right one, and that from getting advice from peers.
100%. Gerry, another one just there for you. How do you juggle being committed and excelling in your work, but also balancing that along with family life?
Yeah, so it's a super question, you know, and I got asked a very similar question in a different platform. But if we're going to take on something new, if we're going to go maybe to nighttime college as an example, whatever it might be, is that going to throw something else out of balance? I think, or am I just taking on another goal, you know, and just adding to maybe an already really busy life? And it's important to maybe, one question that might support people is, if I'm saying yes to this, what do I need to say no to? Like, is there something I need to say no to allow myself to be able to do this? That's something that comes to mind now, because it's all very well taking on this, that, and the other, but if it's going to lead to more stress and maybe other people are impacted, well, then maybe just to consider it before, or maybe to involve other people in that. If I was to do this, how would you feel about that? How could we make work for both of us? So maybe to consider other people, and maybe just to ask yourself some of those kind of questions.
That's brilliant. I'll put this is the second to last question. I'll put it to both of you. How do you stand out on a CV?
How do you stand out on a CV? For me, it would be, and it might seem like a very simple thing, but I was asked to pitch for a speaking engagement in the States next summer. And I said, okay, what will I do here? I went into Canva. I'm sure people might be familiar with Canva. It's like your own graphic design. And I just designed a brochure. It took me about an hour. But I was also very particular about the words that I used. I researched the company. I researched, you know, what their goals were, their vision and mission. And I also made sure that so I was putting forward a CV. It was like a speaker sheet, but it's the same thing. I was pitching for a job. And I also put in specific companies I'd worked with in that industry and what they had said about me. So that formed part of my CV for that. I put some nice colors into it. It had an immediate impact. So I think my simple short answer maybe would be, if I'm going to look at 40 CVs, I'd put a bit of effort into making sure it's presented visually really, really well. Maybe put some colors, not over the top, but that it even stands out on a table. How can it stand out on a table that it looks a little bit different? Because that one, they might just sit up and maybe give an extra bit of look to that one and maybe definitely call you for the interview, whereas they mightn't if it's just among a sea of white and black. So maybe that, and then it's up to you when you get in front of them, I guess.
Brilliant. Marcus? Maybe
yeah, I think Gerry has definitely covered all this one off. But the one thing that I would say is that your CV is your sales pitch. And as Gerry said, you know, you're selling yourself when you're going into a company. You're putting your best foot forward. think everything Gerry has said there is the best answer to actually go by. But that's just, yeah. Look, I just think you have to put the best things about you forward. You really have to present yourself in a fashion that is, it's a fair fashion, a true fashion, and you just have to sell yourself that you are the best possible person for that job. But I would take Gerry's answer.
And that's 100%. Look at just the final question. I'll put it to Gerry. Does making yourself uncomfortable in your job mean that you sacrifice some of the happiness and enjoyment in your current role?
Me personally, it's the opposite, if I'm being honest. Because if I go in and say I do a goal setting program as an example, I do a lot of goal setting workshops, public speaking workshops, help people overcome challenges or deliver great presentations. But say I do a goal setting, say that's my business, is goal setting workshops twice a week. And I deliver this program twice a week, and it's 2 hours long twice a week. If I don't innovate that, I guarantee you, after 3 or 4 months of doing the same thing, I guarantee you my motivation, my happiness index is going to wane. I firmly believe that. So you substitute that for talks. I do a lot of talks, do a lot of workshops. My goal every time I speak, I'm doing another presentation at 1 o'clock today, and I've already figured out how I'm going to be even better. So I'm going to do one thing that's going to challenge me a fraction more. I'm doing it today based on what I did yesterday. So my goal every time I speak is to just improve it by a fraction. And it's just, how can I be a fraction better in the job? It doesn't have to be radical. Sometimes it might be a big shift, something really uncomfortable. But other times it could be just a tiny little thing that could challenge you. But I'd be very confident if you do that, you will enjoy that experience more. And if that's what you do in your job, well, then I think it's not just going to sustain your motivation, I think it's going to elevate your motivation, because you will be enjoying what it is you do more. But if we just do the same, I think we're like flowers. Slowly but surely, we won't even stay the same in terms of motivation. We'll slowly lose motivation unless we innovate what it is we do.
That's absolutely brilliant. Look, with that, everyone, I'm going to bring the session to a close. Just myself personally, I'd like to thank both Gerry Duffy and Marcus for agreeing to come on this. Now we will have you, Gerry, again in the new year. Look, personally, I think there was a lot of valid information given there on both presentations, and a lot of food for thought on how you do actually apply yourself better in an early career. So other people to thank, I'd like to thank Grant Thornton and Macra Skillnet for co-sponsoring this event, and then also to Barbara McGoldrick from the ASA for pulling this all together. It wasn't an easy task. And then the subcommittee itself that was part of bringing this whole climbing the career ladder session together, who's made up of Jesse Collins, Johnny Gleason, Catherine Heffernan, Niamh Bambrick, Odell Evans, and Una Sennett, and then obviously Anne-Marie Butler for her guidance and all that. So thanks to everyone involved. Thanks to you, the attendees. Without your engagement, without your registration, without your questions, it wouldn't be the successful session it has been today. And looking forward to seeing you in the new year. Thanks very much, everyone.